Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today's our completed sales and pricing video that we like to do for CGC 9.8 comic books here. And, I always say on these videos, one of the best things you can do if you're buying CGC 9.8 comic books is to just do some research and know the prices of the key issues that you might want to buy. And then there's like way less of a chance of overpaying at all. So it's, something that we do almost every week on the channel here. Look at some of the completed listings and prices off of eBay and all these great CGC 9.8 key issues. So these past few videos have been really interesting. I think with the whole coronavirus situation, you would think that would affect comic book prices, and I think it has in some kind of interesting ways. But one thing I did want to mention, as a CGC 9.8 comic book collector specifically, I think, you could be really happy that the CGC 9.8 market has not, fallen off a cliff, or it didn't even really correct at all, I don't think, during this whole coronavirus thing. Maybe you might get a couple special situations out there, people that are cash-strapped and might need to get rid of a book quick, but in general, I think the opposite of what people thought was going to happen is happening, where prices are heating up. So, I did hear quite a lot of people thinking that, the comic book market could correct a lot, and they were really worried. But from the sort of CGC 9.8 perspective, I think the market's actually doing the opposite of that. It's really heating up, and yeah, we'll get into some of the evidence for that. And I think it has a lot to do with the stimulus checks that the United States citizens are getting. So I think, it'll be interesting to see moving forward here for the next, 2-3 months. Will some of these firmer prices hold? Because, let's get into the full list of prices here of all these awesome key issues in the CGC 9.8. All the prices we'll talk about are US dollars, and I'll have a list in the description below of all the issues with the prices. So a couple books here from the team first off, and I will say if you're actively buying some CGC 9.8 comic books, if you want to let me know the price, you can let me know on Instagram or in the comments below, and I'll try to put that sale on this video of some completed listings, because we got 3 books from the team today. So Fernando had talked to me on Instagram. He bought a Batman Adventures 12 newsstand edition in the CGC 9.8. You don't see this one very often. And, I think this was a good buy by Fernando at, he paid $2,125. So I think the first thing to say about, Batman Adventures 12 in the newsstand is really rare. This is an awesome investment grade book. But I was looking at some of our pricing videos 6-7 months ago, and one of these had sold in the direct for $1,926. So in the direct edition, not even nearly as cool or as rare as the newsstand. This is a really high grade copy too. Even some of these 9.8s of this book aren't so eye appealing, but this one really had the eye appeal as well, and a newsstand. So, given the current environment with kind of a Batman Adventures 12 direct going for about $1,600, you can make the argument that this might be a little bit of an overpay, but I think with the newsstand edition, and given the prior history of this book, where the directs were basically going for around this price 6 months ago, I think this is a fantastic price. Yeah, I think I could easily see this one, and you got a long-term time horizon. This could be around $3,000 for sure in the newsstand. A Batman Adventures number 12 newsstand version. So yeah, really cool one to have, and great by Fernando. He also bought an NYX number 3, first appearance of X-23 for $800. And I kind of recommended to get this one maybe for $700, $750. So sometimes when you want a book right away, and I'm a perfect example of that, sometimes I'll pay it maybe an extra 10% or something. And so I think $800 is a pretty fair buy. Certainly, this is another book in the last 3 years here that basically was going for around $1,000 in the CGC 9.8, and I think we're even over that at one point as well. So 2 books by Fernando there, great buys, I think. Brett, he also grabbed Amazing Spider-Man 431. This one was in an old case, so first Cosmic Carnage, kind of this one, a great classic 90s book, a late 90s book that's somewhat underfollowed kind of and overlooked sometimes, but one that I have 2 of in the CGC 9.8 of this one, and he grabbed one in an old case for $130. So mine was like, I grabbed one for $170, and I checked the other price. The other one was $150. So I thought I got pretty great deals on mine. I've actually seen auctions in this one go for $199. I remember an auction, where I was, trying to win it, and it basically went up to $200, and I didn't end up winning it. But so Amazing Spider-Man 431. I think he mentioned too, this one in an old case, he might get it re-slabbed, which apparently is pretty cheap. If CGC isn't grading the comic, you could just get the book sort of re-slabbed, I guess. So $130, I think, is a great price target for this book. So yeah, there's still some deals out there. Yeah, Brett still got a deal out there in this sort of hot environment of coronavirus stimulus check environment, I guess. So okay, that's all the team books. We'll get into some of the research and some of the key issues that I was seeing this morning in the CGC 9.8 that sold. An Incredible Hulk 340 saw one sell for $474.99 in the CGC 9.8 in a nice new case. It was almost perfectly centered. I do mention, because McFarlane's signature is kind of on the spine on this book, it's kind of important for a nice centered one. But this one was almost perfectly centered, but not quite. $474.99. Grabbed both of my, well, I have 4 of them, but I've grabbed maybe my last 2, I guess you could say, for right over $400. I think they were like $407, $404, both of them in an auction. So to see one go for $475, I think is a little bit of speculation on, some of these Wolverine Hulk movie rumors that somebody did send me an article, so they're writing about that. I'm not too sure of the specifics on that, but Incredible Hulk 340, the second time Wolverine and Hulk fight, classic Todd McFarlane cover for $475. Maybe it's heating up, but maybe this is the stimulus checks, or maybe if you're patient on this, you still get it closer to around $425. Maybe would be, I think, a really good fair price. Next book, one we talk about often, Batman 423. Saw one sell. Like, there's only 95 of these in the world in the blue label, so you don't see them sell very often. And someone paid up for this one, $650 one sold for. And I have 2 of these in the CGC 9.8, and one was both of mine were actually right around $450, which I thought was a bit of an overpay. I've seen them go for a little under $400. I think the fair price is like $425, very similar to Incredible Hulk 340. But $650. And it was looking pretty good in a new case, but certainly a full retail price. And maybe this is heating up, or maybe just maybe a sort of noob buyer coming in with some stimulus check money, just grabbing a book for $100 or $200 more than what it normally goes for. So yeah, that happens though, certainly in CGC 9.8 in the CGC 9.8 market. Next book here, a pretty cool one to see some sell. A Wolverine Limited Series #1, so brought mine out. Got a really nice copy. So I saw 2 of them sell in the CGC 9.8. One was $354.99, and the other one was $350. The $350 one was a newsstand version. So this could be some evidence that books are heating up as well. I bought mine for $275. Which, when I did the completed listings for this back then, $275 was like, it had been selling for that for like a year, for $275 in CGC 9.8 for a nice direct version. So to see one go for $354.99 was the direct, and then $350 was the newsstand, both for, certainly a little bit more than that. So maybe this one's heating up. It's not very rare in the CGC 9.8, actually. The CGC 9.8 ratio is really high. But so classic, so iconic. There's almost not a more classic 80s book than a Wolverine Limited Series #1. Heating up prices, $354.99 and $350 for that book. Saw New Mutants 98 sell, and there was a couple of them that sold, and one was a direct version. It was, and maybe some more evidence here of some prices heating up. $906.75 for a direct version, and $965 for a newsstand version of both in new cases, New Mutants 98. So looking pretty good, to be honest. But if you were patient on this book 4 or 5 months ago, about 4 or 5 months ago, I would say I remember an auction for $615. I think it was right around there, of a direct version of this book, looking pretty good in a new case. And that was a really good price, but many had sort of went between $650 and $700 in the direct. So to see one go for $906, which is more like the prices that I was used to when I first got into the CGC hobby about 3 years ago. Yeah, New Mutants 98s were like $905, but like if you can get it under $900 was a good deal. So maybe they're heating up again, and I know Deadpool's movie rights are kind of coming back to the MCU Disney. So yeah, it's sort of, and I have recommended in the past to kind of get this one. Well, it's there's not a Deadpool movie in theater or anything like that, because yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before another Deadpool movie comes out in the next couple of years here. But yeah, maybe look to get a direct more around $700, $750. Yeah, seeing these are some higher prices than to what we've come accustomed to seeing over the last year, I think. Really cool to see this book sell a couple of them. Transformers #1 in the CGC 9.8. I got a CBCS 9.8. So kind of the next best thing, but great copy of Transformers #1 first print. First Megatron, Optimus Prime. So you don't see these sell all the time at all, and actually this in the past 2 weeks here, I think there was 2 auctions that I went for. Transformers 1, CGC 9.8 white pages, this one being a CBCS 9.8, but so one sold for $611 and one sold for $685. So yeah, the price is really firming up. I think this book's reaching some of the potential that I thought it had. Sort of, I bought this one on an auction. It was like $430 or $420, and we'll call that probably about a year and a half ago. But this is a book where I think there's 500 or 600 of them in the CGC 9.8, so you just don't see them very often. So to have 2 of them both go for over 600, I think that's a good sort of a measure of the fair market value now of a CGC 9.8 Transformers 1. And it honestly is a book I want. I do want, for some reason, this CBCS 9.8 is just not good enough for me. And just a book I wouldn't mind having 2 of anyway. So, I don't know. It looks like I might have to pay over 600, or maybe this is, some of these, the stimulus check sort of coronavirus environment heating up some of the prices. So, maybe I can look to grab this closer to 500. But I think 330 is looking like a deal now. Whereas back then I was like, ooh, over 400 was, maybe a little bit more than what I expected to pay. But it was in an auction, so. Okay, moving on here. A book that I don't really talk about ever. Captain America 323. It's the first Super Patriot. A cool cover, Captain America book of the 80s, and I saw it on an auction, and I was watching it, and I just thought it was a book that you don't see. That's still a key issue that popped up in an auction, so I think this is a good price for it if you ever wanted this book. But it was a $167.50 for Captain America 323, the first Super Patriot, with a pretty cool cover on that one. So kind of a book of the moment here I saw in an auction go for that's somewhat cooling down, I think. It's a Year of the Villain, Arisen #3 in the blue label. So this is the first full Punchline, so a really popular kind of modern book, this one, that's been pretty hot lately. But cooling down a bit, because I think, I'd seen a couple of these in the blue label sort of right off the back of the Punchline hype, right in the midst of it, I guess. Sort of this book went for like $175, I'm pretty sure I remember. It was like right around there. So, seeing one go in an auction for $125.99, and the Year of the Villain, Arisen #3, the first full Punchline. So yeah, maybe cooling off on that book a bit, and if if you haven't bought it yet, but you were waiting for a pullback in price, it's probably starting to happen, and that might be a decent price to aim for, sort of the lower hundreds, kind of the 100 to 125 for this book in the CGC 9.8. So, Fernando, I bought that Batman Adventures 12 newsstand. Well, I saw Batman Adventures 12 direct in an auction, a direct version, in an auction go for $1,635. So, I made that video recommending them because I saw a couple pop up on eBay for like $1,400 or $1,500 or best offer. So this one in an auction going above that. So maybe it's starting to heat back up a little bit, but again, a book that used to go for about $2,000 all the time. I double checked. I was looking at our pricing videos like 6-7 months ago, and yeah, like 1,920 something one went for. in an auction, a direct version. So still pulling back, but yeah, this is a good sort of idea to get the full range on this book. Batman Adventures 12, kind of the lower end of the range, 1,500, and then in the newsstand, Fernando grabbing it for 2,125, which I think if you got a long-term time horizon on that price, you're going to be fine. It's such a rare book. Similar to like Amazing Spider-Man 300 in the newsstand, like you just don't see them very much. Speaking of Amazing Spider-Man books, Amazing Spider-Man 301 I saw sell in an auction. So this is kind of cool to see one sell in an auction. And it was looking really good for $940 in a new case. So my sort of thinking on this one was that this one always went over 1,000, to be honest. I thought it was like kind of a 1,100 was a good deal. But yeah, I think this one is, you know, an example of not every single book right now is heating up. Like there's still, you know, some deals to be had. So I think Amazing Spider-Man 301, this is so rare in the CGC 9.8. It's very similar to Amazing Spider-Man 300 in rarity. Like the 9.8 ratio is 6% something. It's like 6 point something percent. So a rare book in the CGC 9.8 going for $940. I think that's a good price for whoever bought that. A hot book right now, and I could have brought mine out actually. The G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, #1. I saw 2 auctions of this book sell. And interesting prices, yeah. So one was $541.99 for a direct version, looking very similar to mine. Looks pretty good. Mine actually, I think, looks better. It's better centered, mine. And wow, I thought I was overpaying for mine at $380. So this one in an auction going for $541.99. So this book's really looks like it's heating up. A newsstand in an auction went for $530, so a little bit less than that $541.99. And a newsstand version being maybe a little bit more rare. This book, though, just basically right after I bought it, kind of exploding to over 500 maybe now with these 2 auctions. So it'll be interesting to see how this book does moving forward. I know the Snake Eyes movie is coming out. I don't know if it's been delayed or anything, but that's still yet to come. So this book's probably going to be pretty tough to get for a while for a decent price. And yeah, maybe myself jumping on it for $380 when I thought like $325 was a fair price. But now for $541, some of these going. So yeah, it just goes to show you almost can't really tell what's going to happen. But maybe a book to be a little patient on right now and maybe wait till after the movie, unfortunately. Such a cool book, though, G.I. Joe #1. So many cool first appearances. Snake Eyes, the Baroness, Cobra Commander. Yeah, just a great book. I saw a really cool book, next one, a Predator #1. This is the first Predator in comics and kind of has a pretty big cult followed book, to be honest. Yeah, it's a neat cover. I was watching it and kind of thought about bidding, but ended up selling for $315. And I think you could probably get that under $300. This, you know, I think a bit of a bidding, and this was from a popular seller, this auction. So maybe a bit of a bidding war going. I think under $300 is a price to aim for on that. Maybe $275 to $300. Saw an Omega Men #3 going in auction. The first appearance of Lobo, one we talked about in a couple of videos here lately. And this one going for $192.50. It did look pretty good in a new case, but that is like kind of expensive, I think. This is one where there's a lot on the census. There's like over 1,000 of them, I believe. So quite a lot out there, and yeah, you see quite a lot of these go for like $160, $170, even $150. Because there's a lot, like some just tend to pop up. So if you're on top of your searches, if you really want this book, like a lot will kind of pop up that you can best offer around $150 and probably get this book for around that price. But a popular DC key, first Lobo, $192.50, probably near the higher end of the range there. Yeah, higher end of the range is $200 for that book. A really rare one that I saw sell was an X-Men 97. This is the first Lilandra. So, yeah, kind of Professor X's sort of mutant girlfriend, maybe. X-Men 97, though, this is like, you know, well into the 70s, one of the first earlier appearances. These books are very rare in the CGC 9.8, and this one sold in an auction, too, so really took note of it. But $1,385 for this book, X-Men 97, first Lilandra. Yeah, really cool, colorful covers of such great, like, Dave Cockrum covers, and Gil Kane, I think, might have been on this cover, too. It might have been that old. Next book was one I don't see very often, and I think it's a pretty cool issue to maybe consider. It's an Incredible Hulk number 200. Got kind of a cool montage cover of a lot of superheroes on the cover with Hulk. So it's kind of collectible in that way, and it was went for $205.05 in an auction. So that's probably pretty close to like the lower end of the range for that book. It is really collectible, and it's an older book. Incredible Hulk 200 is, I believe, it might be in the 70s, maybe a very early 80s or late 70s book. So it's an old book, but super collectible. In the CGC 9.8 white pages, looks great. It's kind of a white cover, so $205.05 I think is a good buy. So I saw an X-Force number 2. This is the second appearance of Deadpool, and this is a book I'm kind of on the record as just saying like I don't like the cover, but it's got like a lot of like its first appearance of or second appearance of Deadpool and its first appearance of Weapon X. I think it's in like a different form or something. I'm not sure exactly how they did that, but this is a good example of the price that I would look to pay for this book, whereas a lot of times you see people sort of overpaying for this book because it's the second Deadpool. But I find it, a lot of people have the attitude that I have where they just don't like the comic book that much because the cover is a bit underwhelming. But I saw one go for $38. So this is an idea of like, I just think this book's kind of unloved, and I wouldn't really recommend it. But if you were to get it, I definitely wouldn't pay like $100 for it or something, because some people think, oh, the second appearance of Deadpool, like it must be like worth $100. But yeah, this going for $38 in an auction, I think is if you want this book, sort of the price you want to pay in the CGC 9.8, sort of around sort of that $40 to $50 range. I wouldn't pay any more than that for this one. Next one, Batman 655. First Damian Wayne in cameos, a super collectible Andy Kubert cover. It's kind of the red covers. This one went for $129.99. And in an auction for this one, it goes for like under $100 sometimes if you're really patient in auctions. So $129.99, probably near the higher end of a fair market value. And similar to Batman 666, which is a book that I really like. I have 2 of those. I kind of like that better than this book, but they're both the same price. Like you could pay up for Batman 666 around like $120, $130, maybe even $140, $150. But if you're patient in auction, you might get it for like around $100. Next one here, New Teen Titans number 2. First Deathstroke the Terminator. Yeah, I saw another one of these sell, and it was for $499.99. And it kind of said in the title, like, price to sell. And every now and then you see that with, like, some, solid key issues, and they put it in the title that it's price to sell, and sometimes they're telling the truth. And in this time, yeah, $499.99, a decent price. On our last video, I had talked about, I think it was in the DC video, yeah. Talked about a couple that I went for, like, $460, $470. So if you're really patient and wait for an auction, maybe you save $20 or $30, but $500 for that one is a pretty decent price. And this was a direct version, so maybe you could get that around $450 if you're super patient. Saw Spawn number 1 newsstand sell. So yeah, book I recommended for first appearance of Spawn in the rare newsstand version. Is a well sought after book. Saw one sell for $424.99. So maybe heating up a bit, but I've seen Spawn number 1 newsstand sell for this before, and if you're patient in an auction, you get it closer to kind of like $350. I've seen them even lower than that, but I bought mine for $375, and that took me like a year to get a good deal with decent shipping to Canada to find one for $375. So $429 or $424.99 I think is kind of a fair, but paying up full retail price. I've saw this book go for $500 and they buy it now, because every now and then there's just not a lot of these on eBay. One selling for $424.99 is not too bad of a price. So a book we talked about in the last video here was a Silver Surfer 44, and I saw one of those sell for, and it was this morning too, so maybe they saw the video and went out and bought it. But it was $199.95 for Silver Surfer 44, first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet. And I'd mentioned, like, I bought my second one for like $155, and I thought that like even up to like $180, I thought would be a really good buy for first Infinity Gauntlet if you had a kind of long-term time horizon. So Yeah, 200 I think is still pretty decent, and certainly during Avengers Endgame I mentioned, this was going for like 225, 230. Like, it was really hard to get under 200 during those movies, so not a bad price. Okay, last two books here, and it's kind of the same book though, but the second and the first print. So Ultimate Fallout 4, I saw a bunch of the second print sell because this, I mentioned this, how this book's kind of heating up, and I saw 4 of them sell. So kind of all in the last like 2-3 weeks. I think some of them were a bit older, but I thought it was just a good cross section of everything that's going on with this book. So one sold for $270, one sold for $292, one for $299.99 in an auction, in a buy it now. That one was $299.99. The first 2 were auctions, and then the last one sold for $375. And that one I believe was the most recent. But Ultimate Fallout 4's second print was literally 3 to 4 months ago. This book was going for about $125 in CGC 9.8. People were definitely overlooked it and were just focusing on the first print. And I've sort of done that as well. But obviously now one going for $375, and the lowest end of the range was $270. So yeah, this book's still really heating up, I think, and it is limited printed, so you know, maybe this one has a chance to kind of stick around that 300 level. Yeah, maybe it'll hold its these higher prices. The next book is Ultimate Fallout 4 first print, and yeah, that's one I got. I probably should have brought that one out, but yeah, these are all first appearance of Miles Morales, and yeah, the first print's been sought after and hot for a long time now, but it's just the second print's really just getting going here in the last couple of months. But the first print, not a lot had sold, and I was kind of waiting for one to drop on eBay to see what the price would be, and one sold for $549.99. So that is a pretty hefty price, I would say. Certainly, yeah, 6 months ago we were making videos like it was pulling back to like $350-ish, and I was like, wow, great, you know, great time to buy Ultimate Fallout 4 First Miles Morales for $350. It'll be, you know, this one, not a lot of these have sold this month. There's kind of a bit of a stall in the market, where some, you know, a lot of buyers have it up for like $650, $700, and they're not really budging. So, it'll be interesting to see if this sort of $500 price, sort of holds up. I wonder if, cause I think this book does have potential to kind of be 500 or over. And yeah, I was certainly recommending it around 350 to 400. So, you know, at this price, at, you know, 550, I don't think I would look to grab it for that. Under 500, yeah, I think, you know, people messaging me on the team like, you know, 475, I think, you know, is kind of a price people are paying for this book, is kind of, I think, around the fair market value right now. But one went for $549.99, Ultimate Fallout 4 first print. And Ultimate Fallout 4 second print is still hot. Yeah, it was, yeah, because I think maybe 3 or 4 pricing videos ago, I had mentioned, wow, the second print's so hot, and one went for like $190, and one went for like $230, and I was like, whoa, $230. But now that's not, like $270 is now the lower end of the range, and $375 the higher end of the range. So yeah, and it is kind of cool. The second print, you can kind of see his face better, and it is this sort of a cool version of the first print. So you can kind of see why. Alright, that's the full list of comic books and prices. I will have the list in the description below with all the prices too. A lot of times, like, kind of like when I listen to the videos, I'll have the description open, and I'm just sort of looking at the prices and the issues as I talk. Because yeah, it's a lot of work to kind of put up the issues for these pricing videos, because there's like 20 or 30. So usually I just talk about the prices and the issues. But yeah, you know what? I think concluding up, the market is definitely not correcting. There's no lull to be had, I think, in CGC 9.8 comic books right now. I'm not sure how, like, Silver Age books are going. I know, you know, an interesting thought could be that, you know, Silver Age books might be more like the stock market. Like, they're very, like, investable type assets. So maybe they're correcting similar to how the stock market corrected. Whereas CGC 9.8 books maybe aren't thought of as, like, hardcore investments. I don't think... Maybe not yet, and they're holding up a little bit better because, you know, maybe people that are getting the stimulus checks are more likely to buy a 9.8 than, you know, Incredible Hulk #1 or an Amazing Fantasy 15 or, you know, some of those books that apparently have been correcting. That's not my expertise, but I think definitively for CGC 9.8 comic books, like the market is not correcting, and I'm really happy with how the comic books have held up in price amid this pandemic. I mean, if comic books were going to collapse, a pandemic would be a decent time for them to collapse in price, but they haven't, and they've done the opposite. They've increased. So, yeah, just really happy as a CGC 9.8 collector, because I think it could have been a lot worse. And, yeah, some of the pricing evidence is, yeah, a lot of these books are heating up, and, yeah, you know what, some great key issues. And, yeah, Transformers 1 certainly sticks out to me as, you know, for some reason my CBCS 9.8 is just not enough. And, yeah, now over 600 for Transformers #1 in auctions, but still potential for that one, I think. Yeah, so cool. And such a cult following for Transformers 1. Okay, enough blabbering on, though. If you haven't already, I'd invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. And hit the bell to get all the latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter, too. All the links are in the description below. But yeah, thanks for watching today, and these are really interesting times and interesting videos, and I'm already interested in markets and prices even before all these things happen, but whenever something kind of out of left field comes like a pandemic, it gets even more fun and interesting. So yeah, and to just sort of have these CGC 9.8 comic books increase in price when everyone was saying, oh no, they're going to plummet, is just interesting. Yeah, so thanks for watching today. Really appreciate all the support. Message me on Instagram if you have any questions. Definitely willing to talk pretty much about anything on Instagram. So give me a message. Hope to get back to you sooner rather than later. But thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.